Thanks for joining us, everybody. This is Dean Woodbeck from InCommon Internet 2, and we're here today to talk about the certificate service, the work plan that was developed late in 2016 and carried out in 2017. As usual with these webinars, we'll take questions via the chat, so if you have any questions as we go along, please insert them there. First up today is Chris Bongaarts from the University of Minnesota, and he led the working group that did a survey and developed the work plan. So Chris, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Dean. My job here is to answer the question, where did this come from? And basically tell the story about what it was. So I was the chair of the Certificate Service Review Working Group, which was spun up in fall of 2015. One of the reasons for the timing on that was we were about to come up on the renewal for the vendor contract for the certificate service. So it was a good time. The leadership felt that we should, kind of dig in and kind of take a look at. So, our charter was to specifically review and provide input on matters pertaining to the next generation InCommon certificate service. And the specific deliverables we were charged for to kind of provide, was this community survey, which would then result in a list of desired features from the next gen service, figure out, what's missing from our current service to get there, and then the recommendations for specific next steps. And so we formed this working group and had I believe we had like 6 or 7 members total, with various people who were involved in the certificate service and were generally fairly familiar users with its use. And so our working group kind of put together this survey based on some kind of drafts that we kind of put together, and we kind of fleshed it out and then released it in November of 2015 and sent out messages to InCommon participants and the Cert users mailing list, which covers both the 2 target audiences that we kind of wanted to focus on. One was current subscribers, so that we could find out, what works well and what doesn't work so well, what needs improvement, what new features do you want to see come out of this, as well as, potential future subscribers, what can we do to make the service more attractive to you? What's keeping you from joining? Is it just cost? Is it something else? So those were kind of some of the questions that we wanted to answer with the survey. And so we sent the invitations out to those lists. And then later on, we had additional invites sent to the Common Solutions Group, which is a kind of a technology-focused group of about 30 or so schools that like to work on especially this kind of thing, finding ways that they work together to bring in different services and such. And so we extended the survey a little bit longer than we anticipated, and so it finished up in kind of the January timeframe there, so we could accommodate some of the CSG members that weren't included in the participants or Cert users lists, which tend to be Common Solutions Group tends to be a CIO focused and kind of higher level, as well as some technical people, whereas the participants and Cert users list tend to be more the technical folks. And so the results that we got out of the survey, we had 166 responses, of which 20 were not subscribers to the service, which was, gave us a good little flavor of why, trying to reach out across those 2 groups that we were trying to hit. About 81% in terms of role were actually registration authority officers or departmental RAOs with the current service. So there are people who actually use the certificate service interface on a likely day-to-day basis. And the satisfaction level that was reported was pretty high. 89% reported they were either satisfied or very satisfied of the 95 responses to that particular question. And there was no one who indicated dissatisfied on there. So that kind of indicated to us that in general, the Cert service was something that people saw was doing a reasonable job most of the time, and so it was more a matter of we needed to, kind of fix up what might need some fixing and work on some new features, but we didn't really need to overhaul the whole thing or anything like that. That was good feedback, and just establishing that bit. Also, one of the interesting findings on there that I thought was that of a bunch of suggested potential enhancements, and we asked responders to categorize them as either high value, medium value, or low value for their particular the only one that got high value from a majority of respondents was getting federation and a single sign-on for RAOs and DRAOs to the certificate management interface. And so that played a part in the next step. The output of our working group, we've issued a draft report in late June, early July of 2016, and we took the input from the survey and put it all together, figured it out, rated things, assigned priorities to the different desired features, kind of based on both the information from the survey itself, as well as our observations of traffic on the Cert users mailing list. So yes, if you do contribute on there, people are watching, and it does actually result in action down the road. So by all means, if you're a subscriber to that list, keep on providing feedback there. We do watch that, as well as discussion within the working group ourselves to try and sometimes reaching out to individual respondents to clarify specific requests. And then in addition to that kind of collection of the features and gap analysis, we also had a recommendation to keep an eye on the marketplace so that we can continue to ensure we're getting good value, and that can kind of illustrate to the vendors that if you want to keep our business, you do have to continue to compete. You can't just build something and then forget about it. That's not the way that we want to have this. That's not what we're expecting out of this certificate service. It's not just something that's going to. It's not something that's going to be expected to be static. It's something that we're expecting new features. We're expecting, or for us to continue to get that good value out of that. And so one of our recommendations with InCommon was just, keep an eye out there, make sure that we're not, overlooking anything in there, that the prices that we're paying and that we're getting a good deal for our money out of this service, especially in light of new things that came up during the last 7 years since the certificate service started, such as Let's Encrypt, which anyone can get a free globally trusted cert with some caveats about what's included in there, and so that may change some of the economics especially at the low end of the Cert marketplace. But there's other features within the certificate manager and such that really continue as it's been growing and continue to have new features added to it that continue to make it attractive despite the presence of these free or almost free alternatives. So after we released that draft report, we solicited community review to ensure that we weren't crazy, that this really was what people were, it was an accurate representation of how the community sees the service and what they think the priorities ought to be for going forward with it. And one of the things that was a little different with this is that this was at the time that InCommon started up the new community consultation process, which is actually a little bit more formal, a little bit more well-defined structure for conducting this kind of review. And I believe there were two other projects or working groups that also had consultations that were done in kind of quick succession right around the time we were conducting the one for the certificate group. So that was kind of an exercise of a new approach to that, but it still provided the same kind of function of getting more eyes on this, trying to identify, yeah, people think that this is the way we want to go, because this is InCommon. It's not some random big thing. It's all about the participants. So we, as members, we collectively decide where we want to go with it. And as it turned out, it looked like we were pretty much on the mark, because there were no significant changes that were requested coming out of that process. And so we essentially released that working draft as the final draft. With, I think there were some minor tweaks here and there, but no substantive changes. And that became the basis for the certificate service work plan for 2017.